Welcome back to Us Mint Mysteries. Today's episode is going to leave you speechless, because we're diving into the world of ultra-rare pennies coins that look ordinary, but could be hiding life-changing value. Imagine finding a single penny in your change worth thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. These tiny copper treasures have shocked collectors for decades, and some of them could still be sitting quietly in your old coin jar right now. Now, this next coin takes us back in time, over a century ago, to a moment when America was still young, still growing, and every cent mattered. This is the 1902 Indian head 1-cent coin, and it might look small, maybe even worn down in your hand. But don't let its size fool you. This little coin has shocked collectors time and time again, turning pocket change into unbelievable profit. Take a look at one in fine condition. The detail might be faded, but that proud Lady Liberty wearing a Native American headdress still stands out, an image that captures both America's strength and its spirit of independence. Around her, you can still read United States of America and that simple but powerful date, 1902. Flip it over, and there it is, a wreath of oak and laurel tied with a bow, wrapping around the single word 1 cent. It's classic, it's elegant, and it's one of the most recognizable reverse designs in U.S. coinage history. The 1902 Indian head cent was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and over 87 million were made that year. But here's where things get fascinating. Most of those coins were used, abused, and worn nearly smooth by the time they disappeared from circulation. Finding one in fine condition today, with sharp features and strong lettering, is already becoming harder every year. And here's where the story gets exciting, because not all 1902 Indian head cents are created equal. Some of these coins were struck using slightly misaligned dies, creating a bold outline or shadow effect around Liberty's face or the date. Others were struck on improper bronze planchets, giving them a unique reddish or dark chocolate tone that serious collectors crave. And then, there are the ultra-rare off-metal strikes. A few were accidentally struck on nickel planchets meant for 5-cent pieces. Those are among the holy grails of the series. A 1902 Indian head struck on the wrong planchet recently sold for over $42,000 at auction. Yes, that's right, $42,000, all because of a minting error over 120 years ago. Even the regular bronze versions can surprise you. In fine condition, your 1902 Indian head cent is worth around $3 to $5, but in extra fine, it jumps to $25 to $40, and in mint state red condition, with full original color and sharp details. These coins can sell for $250 to over $1,000, depending on grade. But here's where the jaw really drops. Coins certified as Ms. 67 red by PCGs or NGC have sold for more than $45,000. Think about that. A single penny, struck when Theodore Roosevelt was president, could be worth more than a brand new car today. The beauty of the 1902 Indian head cent is that it tells a story of craftsmanship. Designed by James B. Longacre, the chief engraver of the U.S. Mint, this coin wasn't just a piece of money, it was art. Longacre's Liberty wasn't a Native American at all, it was modeled after his daughter Sarah, wearing a feathered headdress as a symbol of unity and pride. That subtle blend of classical and Native American imagery made the design uniquely American, a perfect reflection of the nation itself. But beyond the beauty and symbolism, there's something emotional about holding a 1902 Indian head penny. Think about it. This coin could have been in the pocket of a farmer, a railroad worker, or a child at the turn of the 20th century. It could have bought candy, a newspaper, or a ride on a trolley car. It's not just metal, it's a tiny, copper time machine. So the next time you come across a worn, brown Indian head cent, especially one dated 1902, take a closer look. Check for those bold details, any doubling in the date or lettering, or that faint reddish glow that collectors dream of. Because you might just be holding something extraordinary, a survivor from America's early days that could be worth far, far more than 1 cent. Now, let's travel back to the early 1900s once again, a time when a single penny could buy a newspaper, a loaf of bread, or even a ride on a trolley. And in 1905, That penny didn't just hold spending power, it held history. This is the 1905 Indian head 1-cent coin, and if you've got one in extra fine condition, you might be holding a small fortune hiding in plain sight. Take a good look at it. The first thing you'll notice is how sharp and detailed this coin still is. Lady Liberty, proudly wearing her feathered headdress, looks almost lifelike. Her cheekbone and the strands of her hair remain bold and defined. The word Liberty on her headband is still clear, which is one of the key signs of an extra fine grade Indian head cent. Around the edges, the inscription United States of America and the date 1905 are crisp and strong. Flip it over, and the reverse side glows with rich copper color. That beautiful oak wreath with the small shield at the top surrounds the words 1 cent. Even after 120 years, the artistry of this design is still breathtaking. Now, the 1905 Indian head cent was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and while over 18 million were produced, the number surviving in collectible condition has dropped dramatically. Most were lost to time, melted for metal, or worn smooth in circulation. That's what makes your extra fine example so special. It's a survivor from a different America. But here's where it gets really interesting. Not all 1905 Indian head cents are the same. Some were struck with minor die varieties and minting errors that can send their value soaring. One of the most sought after is the 1905 repunch date, where the 5 in the date appears doubled under magnification. That small imperfection can multiply the coin's value by 10, sometimes selling for $200 to $500 depending on grade. There are also off-center strikes, where the design was misaligned during minting. These dramatic errors, especially those showing nearly a full rim of blank copper, can sell for $2,000 to $5,000. And every once in a while, a coin expert discovers a 1905 Indian head struck on the wrong metal planchet, usually a leftover from another denomination. Those rare mistakes have brought in more than $30,000 at major coin auctions. Now, let's talk about value, because this is where things get exciting. In extra fine condition, your 1905 Indian head cent typically brings between $20 and $40 depending on color and eye appeal. But in uncirculated red-brown, values jump to $150 to $300. And in stunning full red mint state, these coins can reach $1,000 to $2,500, the absolute record. A 1905 Indian head cent graded Ms. 67 red by PCGs, one of the finest known examples, sold for a mind-blowing $45,600. That's right, $45,000. For a single penny. But beyond the money, this coin carries a story that feels deeply American. Designed by James B. Longacre, the Indian head cent symbolized liberty, strength, and the spirit of a growing nation. Longacre's choice to portray liberty wearing a Native American headdress was bold, a blend of European idealism and Native heritage that captured America's complex identity at the turn of the century. Every time you hold a 1905 Indian head penny, you're holding a little piece of that story. Imagine the hands it's passed through: farmers, factory workers, shopkeepers, even children saving pennies in tin boxes. This coin was there during the rise of industry, the early days of the automobile, and the dawn of the 20th century. So if you have a 1905 Indian head cent in extra fine condition, treasure it. Examine it under a magnifier. Look for that sharp liberty, the fine hair details, and any hints of a repunch date. Because sometimes, even a small variation can transform a common penny into a prize worth thousands. Now, this next coin, it's more than a century old, and it marks a turning point in American history. The 1900 Indian head 1-cent coin, the last penny struck in the 19th century, stands as a bridge between the old world and the modern age. It's a coin that's seen the rise of electricity, the first automobiles, and the dawn of a brand new century. And if you have one sitting in a drawer or tucked inside an old coin album, you might be holding something much more valuable than you think. Take a close look at this beautiful piece in fine condition. You can still see the confident profile of Lady Liberty, proudly wearing her Native American feather headdress, the symbol of freedom, strength, and the American spirit. The details may be softened by time, but the artistry remains alive. Around her are the words United States of America, still bold even after more than 120 years. And beneath her chin that date that catches every collector's eye, 1900. Turn it over, and there it is, the elegant oak wreath wrapping around the words 1 cent, topped by a small shield that symbolizes unity and protection. Even in this grade, you can still see the wreath's texture, the bow's shape, and the balance that made this design one of the most beloved in American numismatics. The 1900 Indian head cent was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, with a mintage of over 66 million coins. Now, that may sound like a lot, but remember, pennies were heavily used in everyday commerce back then. They were in everyone's pocket, passed from hand to hand, day after day. Most of them were down to smooth copper discs or were lost forever. That's why finding one today in fine condition, with visible details and solid rims, is something special. But here's where things get exciting, because not all 1900 Indian heads are the same. Some were struck with minor die cracks, visible as thin raised lines running across Liberty's portrait or the reverse wreath. Others were slightly off-center, creating unique misalignments that collectors pay big money for. And every once in a while, a dramatic double die obverse surfaces where the date and letters show a subtle but clear doubling under magnification. Those rare varieties can turn a common penny into a true treasure. One such 1900 double die error sold for over $2,500, while an off-metal strike believed to have been struck on a foreign planchet brought in nearly $15,000 at auction. Even regular strikes have impressive value potential. In fine condition, your 1900 Indian head cent is worth around $3 to $5. But move up the ladder just a bit. In extra fine, it can fetch $25 to $40. And if you ever come across a stunning red uncirculated piece, the kind that glows with its original mint color, the price can leap to $800, $1,200, and even beyond. And the record? One single 1900 Indian head cent graded Ms. 67 red by PCGs sold for an unbelievable $19,975. That's nearly $20,000 for a 1 cent coin struck 125 years ago. But beyond the price tag, this coin tells an emotional story. The year 1900 was a moment of optimism. America was growing fast, and people believed the future held endless promise. Holding this coin feels like holding a piece of that spirit. It's not just copper, it's a time capsule from the dawn of the 20th century. And think about this when you see that date, 1900. You're looking at one of the last true Victorian-era coins ever made in the United States. A design born in the 1850s, struck for the final year before the modern age began. So if you come across a 1900 Indian head 1 cent coin in fine condition, take another look before you spend or trade it. Check for strong lettering, clear date, and any signs of doubling or misalignment. Because even a coin that looks ordinary could be a rare survivor worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Now, here's a coin that takes us north of the border to a time when Canada's pennies were made of real bronze and packed with character. This is the 1946 Canadian 1 cent coin, and while it might seem like just another old penny, don't be fooled. This little coin carries post-war history, hidden errors, and shocking auction results that have stunned collectors for decades. Hold one in fine condition, and you'll see why collectors love it. On the obverse, there's the young King George VI, facing left, strong, regal, and calm, as the world was still recovering from the Second World War. The words George's VIDG, Rex et int, imp, surround his portrait, Latin for George VI. By the grace of God, King and Emperor of India. Just imagine this coin was struck while the British Empire was still vast. Before India's independence and long before Canada switched to Queen Elizabeth's effigy. Flip it over, and you'll find one of Canada's most iconic designs, the 2 maple leaves on a single twig. Bold and simple, with 1 cent, and Canada above and below. It's a design that perfectly captures the pride of a young nation emerging from wartime into peace and prosperity. And beneath it, the date that makes every collector pause. 1946, the 1946 Canadian cent was struck at the Royal Canadian Mint in Ottawa, with a total mintage of just over 56 million coins. That might sound like plenty, but consider this post-war economic recovery meant these pennies saw heavy use in everyday life. They bought newspapers, candy, and bus rides. Most were worn smooth, lost, or simply thrown away when Canada discontinued the penny decades later. Finding one today in fine condition, with full lettering and strong details, is becoming rarer every year. But here's where things get exciting. The 1946 Canadian cent hides a few rare and fascinating varieties. Some were struck with slightly repunched dates, especially the 6, where under magnification you can see traces of the original numeral beneath. Others show die cracks or planchet flaws, small imperfections from wartime metal shortages and older equipment. These coins, with visible minting errors, can command values from $100 to $1,000 depending on the error and grade, and for the true collector's dream, there are a handful of 1946 Canadian cents struck on foreign planchets, such as those meant for Hong Kong or the Netherlands. These ultra-rare minting mistakes have sold for $5,000 to $15,000 at auction, all because of a tiny change in metal composition and weight. Even regular examples show solid collector interest. In fine condition, your 1946 Canadian cent is worth around $1 to $3, but in extra fine, it can jump to $15 to $25. In brilliant uncirculated, red condition, with that stunning original copper glow, these coins have sold for $200 to $400. But then comes the wow moment. A pristine 1946 Canada 1 cent coin graded Ms. 67 red by PCGs sold for nearly $4,000. Think about that, a single penny, struck nearly 80 years ago, worth more than a gold coin today. Beyond the numbers, though, this coin is a piece of history. The year 1946 was a time of rebuilding and renewal. The war had ended, soldiers were returning home, and Canada was finding its new identity as an independent nation. The penny you're holding, small, humble, and worn, was part of that story. Each one has its own journey. Maybe it was in the pocket of a farmer in Ontario, a soldier returning from Europe, or a child in Quebec saving for candy. Every scratch, every faded detail, is a mark of time. And that's what makes this coin so special. So if you ever come across a 1946 Canadian 1 cent coin, don't overlook it. Check the date carefully. Look for that doubled 6, any cracks in the design, or signs of unusual metal color. Because even after all these years, this little maple leaf cent could still surprise you, and maybe even make you richer than you ever imagined. Now, this next coin may look simple, but don't let its small size fool you. The 1964 Canadian 1 cent coin is one of the most iconic little treasures from the golden age of Canadian coinage. It's a coin that connects the elegance of the past with the modern world, and some versions of it have shocked collectors with values that climb into the thousands. Let's take a close look. On the obverse, you'll see a young Queen Elizabeth II, barely 8 years into her reign, facing right with that graceful, regal expression that would soon become world famous. The Latin inscription reads Elizabeth II, De Gratia Regina, meaning Elizabeth II. By the grace of God, Queen. Every curve, every detail, is a work of fine engraving by Mary Gillick, whose youthful portrait of the Queen was used on Canadian coins from 1953 through 1964, making this year the final issue of that classic design. Flip it over, and there's Canada's most recognizable symbol, the twin maple leaves on a single twig. Simple, elegant, timeless. This design by George Kruger Gray had been used since 1937, and it's still considered one of the most beautiful coin reverses ever created. Beneath the maple leaves is that familiar date, 1964, the final chapter of an era before Canada's coinage was modernized. Now, the 1964 Canadian cent was struck at the Royal Canadian Mint in Ottawa, with a mintage of about 484 million coins. That sounds like a lot, But here's where the story takes a turn, because not all 1964 pennies are created equal. Most people don't know this, but the mint produced two distinct die varieties of the 1964 cent, the normal pointed 5 variety and the much rarer blunt 5 variety in the date. That subtle difference, a slightly rounded versus sharp point on the numeral 5, has created one of the most sought-after small cent varieties in Canadian coin collecting. But that's not all. Some 1964 cents were struck with minor doubling on the date or lettering, known as doubled dies. Others show tiny die cracks through the maple leaves or around the rim, errors caused by overworked dies during high production runs. Those unique flaws can multiply a coin's value many times over. Now, let's talk numbers, because this is where collectors start to say, wait, what? In fine condition, your 1964 Canadian cent is worth about $1 to $3, but as condition improves, the numbers climb fast. An extra fine or almost uncirculated piece can bring $10 to $25, especially if it has rich red-brown color. But an uncirculated red example, bright and glowing with original mint luster, is where things get exciting. Those coins can fetch $50 to $150, and the rare blunt 5 variety in pristine mint red condition. Some of those have sold for $500 to $1,000, but that's not even the top. The absolute finest known 1964 Canadian 1 cent coin, certified Ms. 67 red by PCGs, sold for over $2,600, an incredible price for a coin most people once thought was worth just a penny. Think about that for a moment. A simple copper cent, struck 6 decades ago, carrying the portrait of a young queen and the symbol of a nation, now worth thousands. That's the kind of story that makes coin collecting so magical. But beyond its value, this coin represents the end of an era. The year 1964 closed the chapter on the Gillett portrait, the very first image of Queen Elizabeth used on Canadian coinage. When 1965 arrived, Canada introduced the new Arnold Machen portrait, marking a new phase of the Queen's reign and a new generation of coinage. That makes 1964 not just another date. It's a symbolic farewell to the young Queen's early years. Now, take a close look at this coin. The 1958 Lincoln Wheat Penny. At first glance, it looks just like the ones we all used to find jingling in our change jars or tucked away in an old dresser drawer. But don't blink, because this one marks the end of an era. The 1958 Wheat Penny was the final year of the beloved wheatback design, a design that had graced America's smallest coin for exactly 50 years. And some examples of this unassuming penny have stunned collectors with values climbing into the tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let's start with the details. On the obverse, we have Abraham Lincoln, that timeless portrait designed by Victor David Brenner back in 1909, commemorating the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. It's a portrait that symbolizes honesty, strength, and the American spirit. Just under, "In God We Trust," you can see the fine engraving that gives this coin its character, the calm gaze, the high relief of the cheekbones, the distinctive beard. Turn it over, and there it is, the simple but powerful wheat ears reverse. 2 stalks of wheat curving inward, framing the proud words, 1 cent, and United States of America. It's humble, patriotic, and instantly recognizable. But 1958 would be the last year Americans ever saw it. The very next year, 1959, the U.S. Mint retired the wheat design and replaced it with the Lincoln Memorial reverse, ending half a century of tradition. That alone makes the 1958 Wheat Penny a sentimental and historical piece. Now, your coin in fine condition shows light wear on Lincoln's hair and jawline, some smoothing on the wheat stalks, and a soft brown patina that only time can create. But here's where things get fascinating. There are 2 versions of the 1958 penny, the Philadelphia issue, which has no mint mark below the date, and the Denver issue, marked with a small d. The Philadelphia mint struck around 252 million, and Denver produced over 800 million, meaning plenty were made. So what makes some of them worth a fortune? It all comes down to errors. The rarest of all and one of the most famous in U.S. coin history is the 1958 double die obverse. On this error, the letters in Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date, 1958, are sharply doubled. It's so dramatic you can see it with the naked eye. Only 3 examples of this error are known to exist. Just 3. That rarity has sent shockwaves through the coin world. When one of those rare double die pennies hit the auction block, collectors went wild. In 2018, one example, graded Ms. 64 red by PCGs, sold for $336,000. That's right, a single 1-cent coin selling for over $250,000. And experts believe if another surfaced today in pristine condition, it could easily top $500,000 or more. Even without the rare error, high-grade uncirculated 1958 wheat pennies bright red with flawless surfaces have fetched $1,000 to $2,500 at major auctions. So imagine what that means for anyone who's kept a few old rolls of 1,950 pennies tucked away in an attic. The 1958 wheat penny tells a story of transition from old America to new. It's the final whisper of the wheat fields that once symbolized our nation's hard work and unity. And it reminds us that even something as small as a penny can carry a legacy far greater than its face value. So if you happen to find a 1958 wheat penny in your old coin jar or inherited collection, take a close look. If it's in good shape, especially if it has that brilliant red luster, it could be worth far more than a penny. And if you ever spot that telltale doubling on the date or letters, you might just be looking at one of the rarest Lincoln cents in existence, a 6-figure treasure hiding in plain sight. Now, here's a coin that might look ordinary at first glance, but the closer you look, the more incredible its story becomes. The 1957 Lincoln Wheat Penny might just be sitting quietly in someone's old coffee can, hidden among forgotten change. Yet a few rare examples of this very year have shocked collectors with values soaring into the tens and even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let's take a journey back to 1957, the heart of post-war America. Gas was cheap. Elvis ruled the airwaves, and the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia and Denver was striking hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents for an optimistic nation. On the obverse, the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner, stares calmly into history. A symbol of honesty and resilience. Flip the coin over, and you'll see those beautiful twin stalks of wheat curving gracefully around the words, 1 cent, and United States of America. That simple design had been on the penny since 1909, when it was first issued to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. But by 1957, that design's days were numbered. Just 2 years later, it would be replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse. Now, your coin, the 1957 wheat penny, in fine condition, shows modest wear. Lincoln's cheek and hair are a bit soft, and the wheat lines on the reverse have blended slightly. But all the main details are clear. This is the kind of coin that tells its story honestly, circulated, handled, and part of everyday life in mid-century America. The Philadelphia Mint produced over 282 million pennies that year, and the Denver Mint, marked by the small d under the date, made a staggering 1 billion coins. With so many minted, it's easy to think none could be worth more than face value. But as collectors know, rarity hides in the details. Among these 1957 cents, there are a few extraordinary varieties and errors that can turn a simple penny into a small fortune. The most famous of these is the 1957 double die obverse, a rare misalignment during the die creation process that caused the date, motto, and lettering to appear double. When viewed under magnification, the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust show thick, ghost-like shadows, a dramatic effect that instantly raises collector demand. Another valuable anomaly is the 1957 D repunched mint mark, or RPM. In these cases, the D was punched twice into the die, creating a visible double D effect. Some examples show a clear second D shifted slightly above or beside the first. These little errors might look small, but they can multiply a penny's value many times over. Now, let's talk about the values, and this is where the excitement begins. In fine condition, a regular 1957 or 1957D penny typically sells for around 10 to 25 cents. But when you step up to uncirculated, original red examples, the price jumps fast, $15 to $50 depending on quality. Coins with brilliant red color and no spots can fetch over $200 to $400 from serious collectors, and if you happen to find one of those rare double die or RPM errors in pristine, mint red condition, those can easily bring $3,000 to $6,000, and in the highest certified grades, some have sold for well over $10,000. But here's where it gets truly astonishing. A nearly flawless 1957D penny graded Ms. 67 plus red, one of the finest known, sold for an incredible $8,400 at auction. And some coin experts believe that if a perfect Ms. 68 example ever surfaces, it could command $15,000 or more. Now, here's a coin that caught everyone off guard, the 2009D Lincoln bicentennial penny. At first glance, it might look like any other modern cent in your change. But this coin marks one of the most historic moments in U.S. mint history. And believe it or not, some of these little copper-colored coins have shocked collectors by selling for thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars. Let's rewind to 2009, the 200th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. To celebrate, the U.S. Mint did something special. For the first time in 50 years, they changed the reverse design of the Lincoln cent. But not just once, 4 times. Each new design represented a different chapter of Lincoln's life. The coin we're looking at tonight, struck in Denver and marked with that tiny D, could feature one of 4 stunning reverses. Lincoln's humble birth and early childhood in Kentucky, his formative years in Indiana, his professional life in Illinois, or his presidency in Washington, D.C. Each design is rich in history. Take the Kentucky cabin reverse, for example. It shows the rough-hewn log cabin where Lincoln was born in 1809, a symbol of how greatness can rise from the humblest beginnings. The detail is incredible. The individual logs, the doorframe, even the faint suggestion of the surrounding ground. On the Indiana design, you'll see in Lincoln reading a book while taking a break from rail splitting, a perfect image of hard work and determination. The Illinois reverse shows a confident, clean-shaven Lincoln standing before the state capitol, symbolizing his rise to leadership. And finally, the Washington, D.C. reverse shows the nearly completed U.S. Capitol dome, representing his presidency and enduring legacy. Now, your coin in fine condition shows light circulation wear. The high points of Lincoln's portrait are smooth, and the reverse design has softened slightly, but all the key features remain visible. Even with wear, this penny carries tremendous sentimental and historical value. Because it was only made for 1 year, after 2009, the mint switched again, introducing the Union Shield design that we still use today. But here's where things get interesting and where values can jump from pocket change to pure shock. During production, the U.S. Mint experimented with different metal compositions and planchet supplies. Most 2009D Lincoln cents were struck on copper-plated zinc, weighing 2.5 grams. But a tiny number were accidentally struck on the wrong metal. These rare bronze composition planchets left over from earlier minting runs weigh about 3.1 grams and have a rich reddish-brown tone. Collectors call these transitional errors, and they are extremely rare. One confirmed 2009D bronze Lincoln cent sold at auction for over $4,000. Another example, with the strong double die on the reverse, brought an unbelievable $12,000. And it doesn't stop there. Even regular 2009D Lincoln cents in pristine Ms. 68 red condition, bright, flawless, and fully lustrous, have sold for $2,000 to $3,000. That's right, a modern penny, still circulating today, selling for more than a gold coin from a century ago. So, how can you tell if your coin might be one of the rare ones? Start with the basics. Weigh it. If it comes in at 3.1 grams instead of 2.5, that's a huge red flag that you might have a bronze transitional planchet. Check for doubled lettering on Liberty or In God We Trust. And pay attention to the color. Older bronze planchets often show a deeper reddish tone instead of the bright coppery shine of zinc. In fine condition, your 2009D penny is worth just a few cents, but its story, its history, and its hidden potential make it one of the most exciting modern issues to ever leave the mint. And if you ever happen to find one of those rare transitional or double die examples, you could be holding a four-figure treasure in the palm of your hand.